Once upon a time, in a colourful and lively African village, there was a young girl named Afi. Afi was known not just for her lively spirit, but also for her natural beauty. She had a radiant smile that could light up the darkest room, much like the first ray of sunrise over the savannah. Her eyes sparkled with the same brilliance as the twinkling stars under which she had spent many nights dreaming. Afi's skin was like the smooth, rich earth of the village fields, a deep, warm brown that glowed under the African sun. She had a graceful way about her, whether she was helping in the market or playing with the younger children in the village. Her laughter was infectious, a melody that echoed the joyous rhythms of the village drums. Afi's beauty was not just in her appearance, it was in her kind heart and the gentle way she spoke, the way her presence seemed to make everything around her brighter and more alive. This made her beloved, not only to her family and friends, but to everyone in the village who knew her. Afi's love for teaching was a deeply rooted part of her being, as natural and vital to her as breathing. In the village, she was often seen surrounded by a group of eager young children, her makeshift classroom under the sprawling branches of an ancient baobab tree. Her eyes would light up with unbridled joy as she shared stories, lessons, and wisdom with the children, who listened with rapt attention. She had a unique way of making learning fun and engaging. Using stones, leaves, and sticks, she would teach them mathematics. Through the stories of the village elders, she imparted lessons of history and morality. Afi believed that every child, no matter how young or old, had the right to learn and dream. Her teaching wasn't limited to just books and stories. She would take the children on walks through the village and surrounding fields, teaching them about the plants, animals, and the rhythms of nature. Afi's lessons were filled with songs and dances, making each day a new adventure. One warm evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Afi's parents called her to sit with them outside their modest, warmly lit home. They had always been open and loving with Afi, sharing stories and wisdom under the starry African sky. This evening, however, there was a different tone in the air, one of seriousness that Afi hadn't often seen in her parents. Her mother, a kind woman with gentle eyes, took Afi's hands in hers. She began by reminiscing about Afi's childhood, how she had grown into a beautiful and intelligent young woman, and how proud they were of her. Her father, a man of few words but deep wisdom, joined in, expressing his hopes and dreams for Afi's future. They spoke with a mix of pride and a hint of sadness. Then, her mother's voice softened as she shared the news. They explained that many years ago, they had made a promise to a dear friend, the father of a young man named Kwesi. In accordance with tradition and in the hope of securing Afi's future, they had agreed that when Afi and Kwesi were of age, they would marry. Afi listened, her heart sinking with each word. She looked from her mother's earnest face to her father's somber expression, realizing the weight of the decision they had made and the depth of their belief in this tradition. Her parents reassured her of Kwesi's good character and his family's respectability, emphasizing that this was a decision made with love and the hope of a secure future for her. The news was a lot for Afi to take in. The stars that night didn't seem to shine as brightly, and the vibrant sounds of the village seemed distant as she grappled with the reality that her life was about to change in a way she had never imagined. Her dreams of teaching, her independence, her choice, it all seemed to be slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. But in the warmth of her parents' love and the sincerity in their eyes, she knew they believed they were doing what was best for her. Kwesi was a striking figure, tall and well-built, with a presence that commanded attention whenever he entered a room. His skin was a deep, rich shade of ebony, always seeming to hold a sheen as if kissed by the sun. His eyes, dark and thoughtful, reflected a depth of character and intelligence. His face was adorned with a well-groomed beard that added to his distinguished appearance. His hair was kept short and neat, in line with the city's modern style. Kwesi's clothing was always impeccable, often traditional African attire blended with a contemporary twist, symbolizing his connection between the city's modern life and his roots. Living in the city, Kwesi led a life that was a stark contrast to Afi's. He was a graduate from one of the top universities and worked in a well-respected firm. His life was one of comfort and privilege, surrounded by the buzz and hustle of urban life. He frequented upscale cafes and restaurants, and his social circle included the city's young and elite. Yet, despite his outward success, Kwesi often felt a disconnect, a longing for something more meaningful, something that the city's flashing lights and busy streets couldn't fulfill. The news of his arranged marriage to Afi was broken to him by his parents in their expansive, elegantly furnished living room. His father, a man of traditional values and firm beliefs, spoke with an air of finality about the importance of family legacy and the duty to uphold traditions. His mother, graceful and poised, echoed these sentiments, emphasizing the respect and high standing of Afi's family in their village. Kwesi listened, his expression composed yet pensive. He understood his parents' perspective, the weight of tradition, and the expectation to conform to the family's wishes. However, deep down, he couldn't help but feel a sense of being trapped in a predetermined path, one that he hadn't chosen for himself. His parents assured him of Afi's virtues, painting the picture of a perfect match, but Kwesi couldn't shake off the feeling of a personal choice being made for him. While his parents spoke of the wedding arrangements with a sense of pride and anticipation, Kwesi's mind wandered to the girl he had never met, who was about to become an integral part of his life. He wondered about her dreams, her aspirations, and whether her eyes held the same questions and concerns that often lingered in his. Kwesi's journey back to the village for the wedding was a blend of tradition meeting modernity. The family travelled in a sleek, modern car, a stark contrast to the dusty roads and lush greenery of the rural landscape. Kwesi sat quietly, gazing out of the window, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Osei, chatted about the upcoming ceremony, their voices filled with excitement and pride. Mr. Osei, a man who held deep respect for tradition, spoke fondly of the village, reminiscing about his own upbringing and the values he had been taught. Mrs. Osei, equally traditional, but with a touch of modern sensibility, discussed the finer details of the wedding, from the guest list to the decor, ensuring everything aligned with both their prestigious family status and the village customs. As they neared the village, the car slowed, navigating the narrow, winding paths. Children playing by the roadside stopped to stare and wave, their faces lighting up with curiosity. The village elders, dressed in their finest traditional attire, came out to greet the Osei family, their faces beaming with joy and respect. The finalization of the wedding arrangements was a grand affair, with both families meeting to discuss and agree on every detail. Kwesi's parents presented gifts to Afi's family, a gesture of goodwill and respect. Afi's parents, in return, showed their hospitality and gratitude, ensuring that the Osei family felt welcomed and honored. The discussions were thorough, covering every aspect of the ceremony, from the traditional rites to be performed, the food to be served, to the music and entertainment. Mr. Osei, with his authoritative yet warm demeanor, took great care in ensuring that the arrangements were impeccable, befitting both families' status. Meanwhile, Afi's parents, though more modest in means, were equally intent on honoring their traditions and making the wedding a memorable event. As the two families conversed and laughed, sharing stories and making plans, there was a sense of two worlds merging, the modern, affluent lifestyle of Kwesi's family intertwining with the rich, grounded traditions of Afi's village life. Kwesi, observing all this, felt a growing respect for the traditions he had often felt distant from, and a curious intrigue about the girl, Afi, who was soon to be his wife. Afi and Kwesi's first meeting took place in the heart of the village, under the sprawling branches of an ancient baobab tree, a symbol of endurance and community in African culture. The air was thick with unspoken tensions, a palpable mix of apprehension and formality. Kwesi, dressed in a finely tailored traditional outfit known as a batakari, looked every bit the distinguished young man from the city. His attire was a rich, earthy brown with intricate patterns, symbolizing the blending of his modern lifestyle with his traditional roots. Afi, on the other hand, was a vision of traditional African beauty in her wedding ensemble. Her gown was a magnificent work of art, woven from the finest kente cloth, known for its vibrant colors and elaborate designs. The gown cascaded around her in waves of gold, green, and red, each color telling a story of African heritage and symbolizing wealth, fertility, and vitality. Her hair was styled in elegant braids, adorned with beads that caught the light with every move, and her neck and wrists were graced with handmade jewelry that chimed softly as she moved. As they stood before each other, Afi's eyes, usually so full of life and dreams, were muted, revealing the turmoil inside her. They spoke volumes of her inner conflict, the clash between her respect for her family's traditions and her own shattered dreams of independence and a career in teaching. Kwesi, reading the quiet despair in her eyes, felt a pang of empathy. He, too, was caught between the duty to his family and his own aspirations for a life chosen by himself. During the exchange of vows, the atmosphere was solemn and respectful. Kwesi's voice was steady, but carried an undercurrent of introspection, as he solemnly vowed to honor and cherish Afi. Afi's voice, in contrast, was softer, a mere whisper carried away by the breeze, as she pledged her commitment to Kwesi. The vows, a blend of traditional promises and personal commitments, were witnessed by the elders and the villagers, under the shade of the baobab tree. The ceremony was more than just the union of two individuals. It was a symbol of the intertwining of two destinies, two different worlds coming together. The traditional drums and songs that followed the vows filled the air, but for Afi and Kwesi, the real journey was just beginning. A journey of understanding, adaptation, and finding common ground in a marriage that was chosen for them. After the wedding ceremony, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the village, the time came for Afi to say goodbye to her parents and the life she had always known. Her parents stood before her, their faces a mix of pride and sorrow. Her mother, eyes glistening with unshed tears, pulled Afi into a warm, tight embrace. "You will always be our little girl, Afi," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Remember, no matter where you go, our love will always be with you." Afi's father, a man of few words, placed his hands on her shoulders, looking into her eyes with a deep sense of understanding and strength. "You have always been the light of our home," he said softly. "Carry that light wherever you go, and never forget who you are and where you come from." The depth of their love and the pain of farewell were etched on their faces, and in that moment, Afi felt the weight of her departure more than ever. As she turned to leave, her thoughts turned to the children she taught under the baobab tree, the children who had become part of her daily life, her joy, and her purpose. She thought about their eager faces, their laughter, and their unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Afi worried about who would guide them, inspire them, and nurture their dreams as she had. She had been more than a teacher to them. She was a mentor, a sister, and a friend. The thought of leaving them filled her heart with a deep sense of loss and concern. The children, sensing the change, had gathered around to bid her farewell. Their small hands clung to her, their eyes wide and filled with a mixture of sadness and confusion. Afi knelt down, her beautiful wedding gown spreading around her, and spoke to them with gentle reassurance. "I may be leaving, she told them, her voice quivering with emotion. "But the lessons we have shared will always be with you. Keep learning, keep dreaming, and remember, each one of you is special and capable of doing great things." She hugged each of them, whispering words of encouragement and love. As she finally stepped away, her heart heavy with the goodbyes, Afi carried with her not just the memories of her village, her family, and her students, but also the hope and determination to find a way to continue her passion for teaching and making a difference, even in the new life that awaited her in the city with Kwesi. Kwesi watched quietly as Afi bid her emotional farewell to her parents and the children she taught. He observed the tender embraces, the heartfelt words, and the genuine expressions of love and loss. It was a poignant scene that stirred something deep within him. He saw the impact Afi had on those around her, the way her presence seemed to bring joy and light. Kwesi felt a newfound respect and admiration for the woman he had just married. Her strength, her compassion, and her deep connection to her roots and community shone through in these farewells. He realized then that Afi was not just fulfilling an obligation by marrying him. She was leaving behind a significant part of her life, her identity. As they set off for the city, the journey was a silent one, filled with introspection. Afi gazed out of the car window, her eyes reflecting the passing landscapes that were so familiar yet now felt distant. Kwesi, driving, stole glances at her, contemplating the right words to say. He understood that this transition wouldn't be easy for Afi. The bustling city life, so different from the serene village, would be a drastic change for her. He made a silent promise to himself to be patient, to be understanding, and to support her as she navigated this new chapter of her life.